give it another minute, see if anybody else joins while I'm posting this on YouTube. And Mangal Prabhu, how have you been doing?
Now better. Oh, I'm well. We have regular sanghas with Lila Purushottam and with devotees here in Slovakia. And yeah.
I just figured, hey, there's Krishna Kun. A new picture too of her. And or she's there. Okay, why don't we go ahead and begin? Goragraganya gana gocha goloruharam Gauranga Gura Chama Gopyata Kopa Briksham Gopala Gavaram Satatam Namami Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachila Jachia Dileka Kola Kahe Premananda Hemona Gauranga Hridoya Dariya Bola Bhaja Gauranga Kaha Gauranga Laha Gaurangera Namare Jejana Gauranga Bhaje Se Hoyamara Prana Re Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya Prema Bhidana Padama Pumarta Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Bhaya Pitva Rishe Yustat Priya Janaha Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunatha Brajabala Bapahimam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Krishna Namamrita Varshi Vaktra Chandra Prabhadvasta Tamobaraya Gauranga Deva Anucharaya Namo Namah Shila Narotamaya. Again and again, I offer my obeisances unto Srila Narottam Das Thakur. He's indeed a true follower of Lord Gauranga Dev. The next here. I do here. What's going on? Okay. So our last verse, which was like 100 years ago or something, before we left Europe, we were reading, I think it was from before we left Europe, we were reading from Prema-bhakti-candrika, text 65, or in some versions 66, about Braj Parakya Tattva. And Srila Thakur Mahashoy is describing Nupura Murali Dwani, Kula Vadu Muralini, Suniya Vihita Narigade, Hudaya Bhadoya Riti, Jena Mili Pati Sati, Kula Radhara Majara Dure. He speaks about the sound of Krishna's flute and his ankle bells, which are just like a call of a male swan, and how the female swan, like Braj, like gopis, can't remain in their homes hearing that. And they run to him. So we spoke something in our last session about what is Parakiya Tattva. So in this verse today, there's three main subjects. I'll put this verse up on the board here. This is a really, really nice verse. Govinda Sharira Nitya Tanhara Sevak Tadatire Ashtakunja Hoy. Govinda Sharira Nitya. There's another version which has it Govinda Sharira Satya Tanhara Sevaka Nitya. Just they reverse the words Nitya and Satya. But I looked in our Bengali version here. Let's see here. Which here it is. Sure which Bengali version that is. Oh, this is the version of Pran Gopal Goswami. Nice version. And it agreed, the Bengali agreed with this particular version. So this is what we're sticking with. This is the same as what Ishwar Prabhu printed. And maybe he's using this particular version. I don't know. He didn't give credit to it, which we should give credit. So he's saying basically three things, important things in this verse, in the first part, which I'm going to transcendental. Tanhara Sevaka Satya. Tanhara means his. His Sevaka, his servants are also eternal. Vrindavana Bhumi Tejamoy. And Vrindavan Dham is an effulgent place. Taha Tejamuna Jala, Kori Nitya Jala Mala. How the water of the Jamuna is crystal clear. And Tadatire Ashtakunja Hoy. There are 8 kunjas or groves on the banks of the Jamuna. So I want to just start off with a little bit. This is a very important points. Hare Krishna, nice to see you, Hari Chandra Prabhu. It's been too long. And Visheshwar Gopal Prabhu is here too. He's actually in the next room. Okay, so first of all, there's a saying, Deha Dehi Beda Chaiva Neshvari Vidyate Kvachit. There's no difference between Krishna and his body. Govinda Surira Nitya. This is a very important principle for us to understand. It's a very important principle between those persons who have some conception or idea that they're God themselves. It's an important principle for Gaudiya Vaishnavas to understand, because Krishna himself becomes eager to understand the beauty of his own body. In his Sarva Samvadani commentary on his Bhagavat Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami quotes Mahabharata, which describes it, Nabhuta Sangha Samstano Deho Sha Paramatmanaha. That Nabhuta Sangha Samstano, the Krishna's body, the Lord's body, is never made out of the 5 gross material elements. Similarly, let's look in the Bhagavatam. There's a beautiful verse in Prabhupada's translation. Lord Rishabdev tells his sons in the 19th verse in the 5th chapter, the 5th canto, Idam shariram mamadur vibhadyam satvam hime hridayam yattadayamaha piste krito me yad adayama arad atohi mam rishabam prahur aryaha. Idam shariram, this body is Satchidananda Vigraha. This is also described in the Brahma Samhita, that the inconceivable sattvam, that there's no, it's eternal, it's truth, there's no mundane qualities to it. And then he says a very beautiful thing. He may hridayam yatta dharmaha, that in my heart is dharma. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Srila Prabhupada translates the verse based on Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. He says, my transcendental body, Satchidananda Vigraha, looks exactly like a human form, but it's not a material human body. It's inconceivable. I am not forced by nature to accept a particular type of body. I take on a body by my own sweet will. And then he says, Satvam hi me hridayam yatra dharmaha. My heart is also spiritual. And what is Krishna's dharma? I'm always thinking of the welfare of my devotees. Therefore, within my heart can be found the process of devotional service, which is meant for the devotees. And then the last two lines I'm not really going into. And Sridhar Swami comments on this verse, idam manushakaram sharidam mamadurve bhavyam avi his shariram mama durve bhavyam avitarkyam. That body, it's beyond tarka, beyond arguments and disputes. And mad icha vilasitam, the only reason this body is manifest is by my icha, by my desire. He says, not vaham prakrito manusha ityartaha. I'm never a material human being. And his Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. I'm going to go ahead to another subject within this subject, because here in this verse, Prabhupada's translation, beautiful translation, my heart is also spiritual, and I always think of the welfare of my devotees. Therefore, within my heart can be found the process of bhakti, which is meant for the devotees. So this is the transcendental nature of Krishna's body, and this is what Narottam Das Thakur is describing in this verse, the song, Govinda Sharira Nitya, that the body of Govinda, his Sharira, is eternal. Tanhara Sevaka Satya, and his servitors, his devotees, say a very famous point, which is a very important point. Bhaktya Sanjataya Bhaktya. That bhakti comes from bhakti. Srila Prabhupada, our Prabhupada once said that life comes from life. Bhakti comes from bhakti. You can't get bhakti in any other way. Jiva Goswami, in the beginning of his Bhakti Sandarbha, he says that bhakti is not attainable within this material universe, nor is it obtainable by the jivas who are Paramatma Vaibhav, or emanations, or opulence of the Paramatma. So Sadhu Sangha is the birthplace of bhakti. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes that in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula Hoya Sadhu Sangha, that the birthplace of Krishna Bhakti is Sadhu Sangha. Krishna Prema Janma Tena Puna Mukhya Anga. And even when someone gets Krishna Prema, Tena Puna Mukhya Anga, again, Puna Mukhya Anga, again, this is the chief principle to associate with devotees. So this is repeated again and again and again. It's a most important point. If we want to understand the Krishna and how Krishna is eternal and the devotees are eternal, then we have also the jivas in the spiritual world, his eternal associates there are also Chit Shakti. And he says there in Jaiva Dharma that if someone says that those living entities in the spiritual world can be covered over by Maya, those personalities who are Chit Shakti, then he says that's Mayavad philosophy. You can't say, just as you can't say that Krishna is covered over by Maya, nor can you say that his devotees in the spiritual world are covered over by Maya, because we can't distinguish between the two of them. So, in the sense that they're both spiritual, they're both nitya. The devotees are in the spiritual world are satya. The Brihanardiya Purana describes bhaktis tu bhagavad bhakta sangena parijayate. That bhakti, again, comes from association with the devotees. And Krishna always protects his devotees. Sadhava hridayam mayam sadhanam hridayam tvaham maranatena janati naham tebyo managapi. Krishna tells Durvasa Muni, beautiful thing. He says, Sadhava hridayam mayam, the devotees in my heart, and sadhanam hridayam tvaham. My devotees don't know anything but me, and I don't know in the Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 5, it's described, Navajano jatu katanchana vrajan mukunda sevya navyad anga samstritim smaran mukundangri upagrahanam punar vihatum ichen na rasagraho janaha. That person who's serving Mukunda will never return to this material world. This is Bhagavatam 1.5.19. He'll never, under any condition, someone who goes to the spiritual world will never return to the material world, unlike persons who are practicing other different processes. Right? So once someone has a taste for the lotus feet of the Lord, they'll never give up those lotus feet again. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Sarita Darshani, he explains, Yaduktam yatra kvava. Go ahead and put this on the board, it'll be easier. He says that this verse elaborates, and even if some devotees he says that najatu kadachidapi kadanchana, he'll never return to this material world because he doesn't experience happiness from karma and things. He's experienced what it means to taste the happiness directly given by the Lord. And many other similar statements. Twad avagamina vitti bhavad utta subha subhayor. This is 10th canto, chapter 87, text 40. That when someone realizes the Lord, then he doesn't care about good fortune and bad fortune. He doesn't care about COVID conspiracies or politics or this thing or that thing. He's just focusing completely on the Lord. That's the nature of the Vaishnavas, na karma bandhanam janma Vaishnavanam cha vidyate. They don't have a rebirth caused by karma. There's no such thing as karma for the Vaishnavas. Therefore, Narottam Das Thakur is saying in this verse that they're nitya. And they're always protected by the Lord. They're always eternal. And if we have a misunderstanding about this, then we may have severe doubts. Therefore, Baladevidya of always protects his devotees, and his devotees protect their devotees. It's not possible for those devotees to fall down. They may go away for some time, but they'll be brought back. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Prabhupada's godbrother, told this story that once he was a temple president in one of Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's temples. And at that time, there was a brahmachari there in the temple who had some intimate connection with a woman. And so Sridhar Maharaj had to tell his Guru Maharaj about it. And Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta called for that brahmachari and told him, in a very gentle way. It's not like those of us from the West or something. We start screaming at someone, get the hell out of here or something. But he told him, you can go wherever you want, but you can't stay here. That's his way of kicking him out. And at that time, that brahmachari started crying. But Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was adamant. And so then finally the brahmachari left. And Sridhar Maharaj said, but Guru Maharaj, you just rejected him. How can I go and bring him back? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta explained that just as Kala Krishna Das was rejected by Mahaprabhu, but the devotees showed mercy to him. When he returned to Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu rejected him. But the devotees got together, and Advaitacharya and others, they sent him to Navadvip to inform Sachi Mata that Mahaprabhu had returned from South India. And when he did that, and by speaking this, the pastimes of Mahaprabhu to Sachi Mata was so dear to Mahaprabhu, he got her full blessings. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta told the story. He said, therefore, the devotees are more merciful than the Lord. So those devotees, they're satjanas. They're nityas. Narottam Das Thakur says here, there's no question of them falling down. And it's a very, very important principle to understand. There's a number of other statements supporting this. We'll just read a few of them, and we'll go ahead and take some discussion. In the second canto, chapter 8, text 6, is a beautiful verse. Dotat once been cleansed by the process of devotional service, never relinquishes the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, for they fully satisfy him as a traveler is satisfied at home after a troubled journey. So this is the nature of bhakti. If we think that the devotees are not nitya and the devotees fall down, then why will we have inspiration to worship the Lord? In the Bhagavatam, again, Canto 9, Chapter 4, text 64, Krishna tells Durvasa Muni, Yadara gara putrapta pranam vitam imam param hitvamam sharanam yataha katam tams chaktam utsahe. He says, my dear devotees, they give up their homes. Dara gara putrapta pranam. They give up their homes, they give up their wife, their children, their relatives, even they give up their prana, their lives, just to serve me. They have no desire for any hitvamam sharanam yata. They're just completely taking shelter of me. They have no desire for any material improvement. And Krishna says, how can I give up such devotees? Maybe they may want to give me up, but I can't give them up. Again, there's another statement in the 10th canto, chapter 2. Madhavatavakakvachit prashyanti margat tvahi bada soridaha. Tvaya bigupta vicharanti nirbhaya vinayakani kapamurdasu prabho. Prabhupada translates, O Madhav, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord of the Goddess of Fortune, if devotees completely in love with you sometimes fall from the path of devotion, they do not fall like non-devotees, for you still protect them. Thus they fearlessly traverse the heads of their opponents and continue to progress in devotional service. So that's the nature of bhakti. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a beautiful commentary on this. Let's look at his purport to this. Yadiva brashanti tatapi tvayi bhadasorida eva bhavanti. He says that even if they fall down, when they fall down, they become more attached to you. And then he gives some different examples. Chitraketu, Bharat Maharaj, just like in Indradyumna Maharaj, when they had their so-called fall down, Britrasura, who was previously Chitraketu, he said that their love, Sataguni Bhava sapi prema-bhakti-candrika love increases. We don't have love. So it's a different kind of thing completely. And Srila Prabhupada describes this in many, many different places. Let's look. This is Prabhupada's commentary on Apichet Sudaracharo. He says, a person who's situated in Krishna consciousness and engaged with determination in the process of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, should be considered to be in the transcendental position, even if by chance or accident he's found to have fallen. The words sadhur eva, he's saintly, are very emphatic. They're a warning to the non-devotees that because of an accidental fall down, a devotee should not be derided. He should still be considered saintly, even if he has accidentally fallen down. And the word mantavya is still more emphatic. If one does not follow this rule and derides a devotee for his accidental fall down, then one is disobeying the order of the Supreme Lord. The only qualification of a devotee is to be unflinchingly and exclusively so many statements about this subject. There's a nice commentary, conversation between Srila Prabhupada and Bhakti Jana. Let's go ahead and look at that. There it is. When the souls that were never conditioned at all, did they have independence? And Prabhupada says, yes, they've not misused it. They know I'm meant for Krishna service and they're happy in Krishna service. Bhakti Jana, could they ever misuse it? Prabhupada says, yes, they can misuse it. That power is there. And the devotee says, well, at once I believe you said the conditioned soul becomes perfected and gets out of the material world and he goes to Krishna look and there's no possibility of falling back. Prabhupada says, no, there is possibility, but he does not come. Just like after putting your hand on the fire, you never put it again if you're really intelligent. So those who are going back to Godhead, they become intelligent. And there's so many statements from Prabhupada. Here's a few. A pure devotee has no actual chance to fall down because the Supreme Godhead personally takes care of his pure devotees. That's Bhagavad Gita, purport to 934. And Prabhupada's purport to Bhagavatam 5:11-12. This ordinary living being is of two kinds, Nityabhada and Nityamukta, liberated. They eternally liberated living beings in the Vaikuntha Jagat spiritual world, and they never fall in the material world. Again, Prabhupada writes in third canto, chapter 15, text 48, purport, from Vedic scriptures, it's understood that sometimes even Brahma and Indra fall down, but a devotee in the transcendental abode of the Lord never falls. Again, his purport to 3.326, Bhagavatam. The Nityasiddha devotees never fall down to the region of the material atmosphere, although they sometimes come onto the material plane to execute the mission of the Lord. Just like Jai and Vijay, Prabhupada gives that example. I think that, this is a purport right here in 7th canto, chapter 1, text 35. He speaks about Jai and Vijay. And when they come to this material world, it's not to be compared to someone falling down. And he says, from authoritative sources, it can be discerned that associates of Lord Vishnu who descend from Vaikuntha do not actually fall. They come with the purpose of fulfilling the desire of the Lord, and their descent to this material world is comparable to that of the Lord. The Lord comes to this material world through the agency of his internal potency. By the Supreme Personality of Godhead is an arrangement by Yoga Maya, not Mahamaya. Therefore, it is to be understood that when Jai and Vijay descend to this material world, they came because there was something to be done for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise, it is a fact that no one falls from Vaikuntha. And Prabhupada speaking again about Jai and Vijay in Bhagavatam 3:16-12, he says that this incident therefore proves that those who once entered the Vaikuntha planet can never fall down. And purport to, there's so many statements from Srila Prabhupada. Bhagavatam 3:16-26, he says, the conclusion is that no one falls from the spiritual world of Vaikuntha planet, but is the eternal abode. When my Guru Maharaj was asked about the subject, which is a topic that Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma says, you can't understand, a conditioned soul can't understand it. When devotees asked my Guru Maharaj about this, he spoke in a very simple way. He said, I accept what Prabhupada's conclusion is. And Prabhupada said the conclusion is that no one falls. And Prabhupada said different things at different times. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma, he says that the Acharya speaks in two instances. And the guru may tell the devotee not to eat certain type of food, maybe because there's a lot of pesticides in it or something, may disturb his consciousness. Or he may tell the devotee that they should marry or they should take sannyas. Those are tatkalika instructions, which are for a particular time and place. But sarvakalika statements are for all time and all place. And my Guru Maharaj's comment was that we should understand what Srila Prabhupada gave as a conclusion. So all these points are very important for us to understand. And this is why Narottam Das Thakur in Prema-bhakti-candrika is explaining this to us. Govinda Sharira Nitya. We should understand that Krishna's body is eternal. Tanhara Sevaka Satya. We should understand that his servants are Satya. They're also eternal. They don't come to this material world. If we have some misunderstanding about that, then so many different problems can arise. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. If anybody has any reflections or comments or anything, or just nice to see everybody, we can. Oh, there. You appreciate it. Can you hear me? Raise your hand. Can't hear me.
I'm getting you in and out constantly.
Okay.
I
The
don't know
whole
how is it
time.
for others, but seems my connection is quite stable. So
I got a notification that it was unstable connection. Right now, they're doing some drilling down below. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Anyway, anybody with any reflections or comments, questions? We'll get this drilling. So, wish and adventures.
it's amazing. You presented such a topic and there are no questions. Normally it raises such a disrupt.
Could ask a question, but I didn't want to disrupt the joyful mood.
Go ahead, Mataji.
Well, some people talk about the implications of this topic is did we fall from the spiritual world, the jiva falling or not falling because of the no leaf falls from Vaikuntha, etc. So you're saying nobody falls once they get there, but what about the original statement that we fell down from the spiritual world?
Well, Srila Prabhupada, his comment about Jai and Vijay covers that. He says that no one falls from the spiritual world. But when they come here, like Jai and Vijay did, can you hear me okay?
I hear you now, but there was some freezing.
Before the sun was much better, if there was.
Okay.
I don't know if you.
The drilling is really hard. It's really.
But you didn't speak to the earphones before, or did
I
you
can
use
take
the
the
whole
earphones
mic?
off. Okay, is this any better? Okay, but we'll see what happens if the drilling keeps going on. I think you're going to hear the drilling more intensely now. When drilling starts, it's really hard. So Thakur makes, that Jiva Goswami makes, that Baladevi Vibhushan makes, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati makes repeatedly. And although it is a controversy amongst some devotees in our society, it's not a controversy anywhere outside of ISKCON. There's no, actually, there's no Gaudiya Vaishnavas who believe that we follow our spiritual way. None of the followers of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, none of the followers of Bhaktivinoda, none of the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, none of the Vaishnavas in any of the four sampradayas, Sri Sampradaya, the Madhva Sampradaya, etc. There's no Hindus who believe that. There's no Shaivites or Shaktas who believe that. There's nobody in India who believes that. It's a Christian idea. And Srila Prabhupada, even he mentions in Back to Godhead magazine, the first issue, he explains where he got this concept from. And it was from the Archbishop of Canterbury. He says it was this phrase that we should go back to Godhead. He mentions it in the first issue of Back to Godhead magazine. It's a good thing for preaching. Is that helpful?
It's interesting because I've been hearing the debate about it for so many years. I just always believe whatever it is Srila Prabhupada says, even if it seems to be something contradictory, I accept that more than one thing could be true at once. I don't know.
That's a good point. Prabhupada sometimes told some devotees that we fall. So my Guru Maharaj once commented, he said, Prabhupada said both things. So what's the harm in allowing devotees to say it one way or the other? It should be an optional, if they're quoting Srila Prabhupada. But if we get angry at someone and say, you're not allowed to quote Prabhupada like that because I only believe what he wrote in his letters, in his books, he doesn't say that we fall. There's some description in the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam that's a little fuzzy, that may sound a little like that. But he gives a conclusion in the third canto of the Bhagavatam, and in the seventh canto, he says the conclusion is that nobody falls, which is the same thing our acharyas say. Mangala Prabhu, do you want to share something?
Yeah, it's actually like, the idea that you mentioned is like preaching strategy, Of course, this is just another big topic, that some...
Right, and some devotees become offended by that, I understand. Yeah. But why should they be offended by that? It speaks either Tatkalika or Sarvakalika. Tatkalika means according to time, place, and circumstance. And Prabhupada spoke many things like that. Of course, that's why Guru is present. He'll speak certain things at a certain time. And Bhaktivinoda Jaiva Dharma gives the example of Shankaracharya, who's the incarnation of Lord Shiva, but he came to preach Mayavada. Mayavada Vasach Chastram, Pachanam Bodhamuchate, the public. I have a hard time with love.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Vidarbha Sutta, my obeisances. So happy to hear from you after such a long time.
Nice to hear your voice. I kind of can hear it. Drilling going on.
I'm so sorry. But yeah, I had a question, Prabhu, that I've been thinking about for such a long time, that whenever any conversation, whether we fell from the spiritual world or the spiritual sky or whatever, the question that always comes to my mind is this difference between Nitya Baddha and Nitya Siddha, which Prabhupada says in the ultimate sense, it doesn't matter. But the fact that there are some living entities I mean, this is the first time actually I saw that Prabhupada saying even Nitya-siddhas can fall technically. But the fact is that we are tiny jivas. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that this material energy is very difficult to surmount. So how do you accommodate the idea of an all-loving God with this, with this reality that tiny jivas who are prone to being attracted to illusion, coming under the influence of illusion, somehow Krishna allows that. And I know the whole free will. I understand that he wants to give us free will. But even afterwards, like when a living entity says, all right, Krishna, I'm done, I want to come back, the path back to Krishna is also strewn with so many trials and tribulations and obstacles and difficulties. And why? How do you put that together with the idea? I guess it's the whole big question of suffering ultimately. Like, how do we know a karma, vikarma, all that is known, but beyond that, like, how do we understand that at the level of the heart and learn to trust Krishna through all of this?
Well, first of all, I have a problem when devotees will come and say, you shouldn't discuss some subject, or the only way to understand this subject is by XYZ.
Yeah.
That's really wrong. It's important that we're broad-minded and that we have a lot of discussions. Somebody warn me if you can't hear me because of the noise in the background, which is very disturbing to my mind. It's a little hard. My hearing.
I can hear you right now.
The choice. But Prabhupada and Acharyas explain that the living entity is always under the control of the Lord. In Prabhupada comments, we have two choices. We can either be controlled by Yoga Maya or by Mahamaya. And that devotion, the nature of devotion is Krishna will never let the devotee go away. Just as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when Kala Krishna Das had some difficulties, he was attracted by the wives, the ladies of the Bhattataris as gypsies in South India. Mahaprabhu apparently rejected him, but in reality, he never rejected him. It was just apparent. My Guru Maharaj would say apara vichar, apparent consideration, but the tattva vichar is that bhakti is another quality which overwhelms the Lord himself. And the Lord, he comes under the control of such a devotee. He has no independence himself. And what to speak of the devotee who has no independence, they come under control of the Lord. What I would suggest with this subject, far more important than having an opinion about it, which is what I can say for myself, I have an opinion about it. Long discussions with my Guru Maharaj about it. I studied this thing for or this or that. It may take a long time to understand it. Bhaktivinoda and Jaiva Dharma, he says that as long as someone's a conditioned soul, it means, let me know, raise your hand if the power goes, if the internet goes off again. He says that as long as one is a conditioned soul, they consider everything through the lens of time. And they can't understand the eternal nature of the spirit soul. It's just beyond their ability to conceive. So I made a little story up about this. Many of you probably heard this story, that once there were two little boys, a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they're two brothers, and they were discussing how they got here. And the 4-year-old went to the mother and said, "Mommy, how did we get here?" And the mother looked at the son and thought to herself, what can I say to this small boy about conception and like that? And so she said, well, one day a big bird brought you and your brother in a bag. And the brother, wow, that's far out. So he goes back to his brother. And meanwhile, the yard, and I found you and your brother under a rock. And so the two brothers have a talk. Later on, they start quarreling with each other. Mom said this, oh no, Dad said this, that's nonsense. And finally, one of them picks a rock up and hits the other one on the head and kills him. So it really has no meaning. If they grow up, they'll understand that subject matter. So as long as we're not spiritually realized to a proper point, we can't really understand it. That doesn't mean the discussion is wrong. What's wrong is when devotees try to say that the discussion is wrong. That's wrong. The discussion is an important discussion, but it needs to be conducted in a sattvic way, in a vedic way. Otherwise, it just creates problems in the mind and problems in our society. Therefore, my Guru Maharaj said, why can't we say both from a social perspective? I appreciate it. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you so much. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
I agree with you totally that we have to accommodate and understand that, I think sometimes we are too addicted to answers and perhaps certain things are mysteries and we should, maybe we can stand there in that mystery with wonder and
We just want to Google something and get an instant answer. But Krishna says that Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam, that thing which is the topmost is the most confidential. And he says that Pratyak Savagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartamavyam, that we have to realize it. That's the nature of bhakti. My Guru Maharaj, he spoke that about Prabhupada's Swarup, but a number of different things. He said, I'm not going to speak to you about that in a cheap way. It's something you have to realize. Okay. Leela Purushottam, would you want to share something? So nice to see everybody. I feel so full of joy to see all the devotees here. It really makes me very happy.
Yeah, I wanted to share one thing, but now I'm a little hesitant to use the names so that I don't inspire, because it's gonna be on YouTube and someone could criticize. So I'll try not to use the names, but I've heard like you presented that understanding of Tatkalika and Sarvakalika and Siddhanta, and I've heard that one prominent preacher in movement of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he used to comment on the topic of Siddhanta that it doesn't necessarily have to be like just one thing. And now you're frozen. So did you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, I've got you frozen for a while. That he was using that word Siddhanta in a way like in the relationship to the the one who receives that conclusion, meaning that one statement might be a perfect conclusion for a devotee with a certain type of adhikar, which wouldn't be a perfect conclusion like Siddhanta if we would use the direct translation for person with another adhikar. But both of the statements, though apparently being even contradictory if we would allow it, or at least slightly different, not perfectly exactly the same, might serve as a Siddhanta, as a perfect conclusion for that particular devotee, because for his type of faith, for his development of Krishna Bhakti, it would be a perfect conclusion for him. Can you share your thoughts? Like, is that a reasonable that we can still such a conclusions? Because one could overcome it easily with this Tatkalika Sarvakalika. That would be one way to approach it. But still, is there a credit to call it Siddhanta, like perfect conclusion, without being it like the topmost conclusion for the topmost devotee, but still being topmost conclusion for, let's say, Vaidhi sadhaka, and a different instruction will be perfect conclusion for Raganuga sadhaka, and like that, in that effect.
I like that comment. I think that's beautiful. As far as the word siddhanta, generally we take it to mean the final conclusion.
Yeah.
And therefore my Guru Maharaj would speak about apara vichar and tattva vichar. Tattva vichar means in truth, and apara vichar means in apparent. Nonetheless, we should respect and appreciate.
Oh, Krishna.
None of our acharyas say like this, but Prabhupada said that when we take birth as Lord Brahma, and then from there we take different births. That's a very interesting principle, which none of our acharyas say. Whether that was some problem with the editing or something else, I don't know. I often hear from devotees a frustration and a kind of furiousness, a kind of anger that how dare you suggest that Srila Prabhupada was saying this for preaching, a preaching consideration. But first of all, I don't often see devotees doing that exactly in that way. I don't see them putting Srila Prabhupada down in that way. And Lord Shiva, who's Vaishnavanamyata Shambhu, did like that as Shankaracharya, means it can be done. If Sanatan Goswami, as Fakir Rambu once told me, pointed out that Sanatan Goswami told a lie. He told the jailer that you anyway, you know, I'll let you go, you let me go, and you tell them that I drowned in the Ganga. You tell a lie. So he's telling someone to tell a lie. A Vaishnav can do those. You know, sometime back we wrote that article about the importance of independent thinking, and we gave this example we often give about the small child who wants to drink the bleach. That instruction from the mother, don't drink bleach, it may be a Tatkalika instruction, but it's an important instruction.
Mhm.
And it's absolute in the sense that the instruction is being given with love. And the purport of the instruction is, my mother loves me, my mother wants to protect me, my mother doesn't want me to do something which is going to be dangerous for myself. And in a similar way, we can definitely, I think, look at any instruction from Srila Prabhupada, which might be Tatkalika, like he told some devotees to marry, he told some devotees to take sannyas. He told one sannyasi right after giving him sannyas that you should travel. A sannyasi should never stay in the same place. He sent him out of the room, called for the next sannyasi he just gave sannyas to, and told him, I want you to stay here in Vrindavan and don't go anywhere. I want to become one with that instruction in my heart. Guru Mukha Padmavakya Chitati Koriya Aikya. It's such a, but it may be for me, it may not be necessarily for everybody else. Mangal Prabhu, you got to go to work. Okay, thank you. It's so good to see you again. Hare Krishna.
My bliss, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Looking forward for next session. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Let's see, here's a couple comments. Last one is Mangal Prabhu. And Bonnie, I was thinking about time or the lack thereof in the first topic. So ultimately, how can anyone fall from anywhere when time is collapsing on itself? Sometimes people say that actually we are already there and everything's happening at one time. Now, I don't know if that's exactly true, but as it said, time is conspicuously absent in the spiritual world. I know this wasn't very concise, but do you think this idea has any validity? Well, first of all, this idea that we're all there right now, maybe doing Ras Leela with Krishna or whatever, we just don't realize it because we're eating stool in the material world. um, we don't find that noble motivation. They want to try to reconcile different things. Let's not be harsh and be quick to criticize devotees. Let's try to see their motivation. And sometimes they may say things because they want to reconcile and they want devotees to work together. That's the most important principle. But Bhaktivinoda Jiva Goswami, especially in the Sandarbhas, speaks more about this thing about time. We cannot understand. Everything that we see and perceive is conditioned by time. Unless we have a divine revelation, we realize something beyond this material world, we cannot understand something beyond time. It's all theoretical. And so it like the story that we just told, quantum mechanics, like the story that we just told of the two little boys having a quarrel like that. Their quarrel has no meaning. They're so small, they can't understand the subject matter anyway. But if when they grow up, they'll naturally understand it. So in a similar way, why don't we just understand, okay, I can't understand this right now, but let me just, I understand the process. We all agree on the process. We may disagree with some particular points. That's fine. Let me respect different devotees. It's not a big, and yes, there Maharaj once commented, I don't think this is a relevant subject to divide our sampradaya over it. It's not worthy over quarreling about. But there should be discussion, but the discussion should be Vada discussions. That's my big consideration when we talk about Vanashram or lady gurus or falling from the spiritual world. So many different subject matters. They're okay. There's nothing wrong with talking about them. But why do we have to pick up a stick and try to hurt each other and hate each other, criticize each other for this or that? That thing I very much disagree with. Because a lot of these subjects, especially when we talk about Vanashram Dharma, they're going to be understood in different ways by different persons. Okay? Leela Purushottam, do you have your hand up again or you just put it down now?
Yeah, I just noticed that it was there still. I mean, I had one more thing. I just don't know. I don't want to take your time because you already wanted to stop.
Go ahead.
I was thinking about the essence of what Mataji was asking, and I remember from that passage of Jaiva Dharma where Bhaktivinoda Thakur is dealing with this topic of how the jiva comes into the stage of bondage. Then there is this like ontological question: why does the Lord allow at all such a thing to happen? Because that might be challenging our faith in all good Lord. And the explanation is quite demanding actually on our side from us because I believe it's discussion of Brajanath with the Babaji Maharaj, and he's asking like how come that this happens, and the essence of the answer, and I've noticed that devotees very often like overlook the essence of that answer, that the Lord is the Raso Vaisaha, or like the embodiment of rasa, and he wants to enjoy all the possible rasa, and one of those rasas that he wants to enjoy is the unconditional compassion, and it's not really possible to be expressed fully in the environment where everyone is just willing to serve him, love him, and everything. Like a similar approach to when he wants to enjoy the fight, you know, and like the story of Jai and Vijay, how they came to the material world. So in a similar like way, it's not really fully possible for him to be compassionate, like without borders, to be compassionate to someone who turned against me, who's like against me. And that's why the whole idea of the jivas misusing their free will against the Lord, and he coming to the material world in so many ways, you know, in his incarnations, in the form of his holy name, in the form of gurus. He's coming in so many ways to express his compassion to the living entities. And then Brajanath continues. It's so amazing discussion. He continues and he asks, but if the jiva, the Bada jiva, conditioned soul, gets to know about this intention of the Lord right at the beginning of his gaining faith in the Lord again, and then like at the beginning of his bhakti, will he not again become inimical to the Lord? And the Babaji Maharaj says, certainly yes. So it really demands from us the pure devotional mentality, that we have to be willing to accept that reality, that our existence is only meant for the Lord's pleasure. And if it takes this, if it takes that we have to experience the troubles of material existence, then we have to come to a conclusion, okay, I'm willing to give that price if the Lord can enjoy his intention, his like his intention to enjoy the unconditional compassion on the conditioned souls. So that I found quite amazing, especially that answer, like, will the jiva not become inimical again? Certainly yes. It's like so hard. So that's the challenge, really. I like to, because even when we hear the Lord's pastimes in the spiritual world, like our greatest examples are gopis. What do they have to come through? It's not less suffering than what we go through here. And we can't come to that conclusion that, oh, they have it easy there in the spiritual world. No, they're suffering like anything.
But of course, that suffering is the greatest happiness too.
Yeah.
But it's also the most intense suffering. It's much, much more intense than anything we can experience in this material world. It's very paradoxical.
Yeah.
This is a very in-depth subject. I could present other aspects of it, which would take me some time. There are, maybe I'll just go ahead and try to do this in a brief way. There are descriptions given, for example, in Hari Bhakti Vilas, there's a verse that says that even if someone goes to the spiritual world, if they don't follow Ekadasi here, they'll fall back down again, which seems completely contradictory to what we just said. In this regard, we have to understand the principle of Prapanchika Vaikuntha, which is Dhruvaloka, Jiva Goswami and Bhakti Sundarbha, of a mouse who, during the month of Kartik, started eating some ghee from a lamp, and his whiskers caught on fire and he died. And that mouse went to the spiritual world, and he was with Lord Vishnu for like 100 lifetimes because he relit the lamp. And then he had to take birth here again. But that spiritual world that he went to is Prapanchaga Vaikuntha. And coming back here again, he's Jeta. He remembers his previous birth. And then as a king, he's really attached to lighting lamps, which he does. So according to the description Jiva Goswami gives, there's Agyata Sukriti. And Agyata Sukriti doesn't give eternal liberation. But if someone is doing Bhakti Mukhi Sukriti, Bhakti Mukhi Agyata Sukriti, something for bhakti which is unknown to themselves, is not consciously done, like the mouse with the lamp, then the result is amazing. They go to, they don't stay there forever. Just not known. The mouse didn't understand what it was doing. But as Gyata Sukriti, he's doing it consciously. That leads to bhakti, from which then is described in the same Purana that person, that king then went to the spiritual world and never came back again. So it's a big subject. It's a bit of a postgraduate subject in some ways, although it's not. It has connection to do with prema and with with Leela in the spiritual world, but we don't always see that. But the whole subject matter is not an easy subject to consider because of the nature of our conditioning and time. So it's really something we need to just take our time with, be peaceful. We can recognize very clearly Srila Prabhupada says both things. That was my Guru Maharaj's comment. So if he says both things, then let me take my time and not just jump to one conclusion right away. Let me try to digest it. Yeah, he says there's no suffering would never advance. If there was no traction when you're trying to walk up a hill, if it was just completely smooth, you'd never make advancement. You wouldn't go up the hill. That's Jiva Goswami speaks about this in and therefore it's beneficial for bhakti. Because Krishna himself is Satchidananda, he's full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. You have to suffer. In Jiva Goswami and Bhakti, that they can have empathy. So when we suffer, we broke our arm. I've never broken a bone in my body, so I can't really understand what it feels like to break a bone, at least in this life. So I can say, oh my, I'm really sorry to hear Hari Chandra Prabhu, you did this, or I can say that to someone, but it has no meaning because I haven't experienced that. But when I've experienced it, then I can say, yeah, man, I know what that's like. I went through that thing. And by being able to understand the suffering this other person's gone through, I can offer real compassion. And this is why, by the way, in a social way, devotees sometimes feel hurt, or they feel sometimes offended, or at least they feel less than inspired when someone just comes to you in kind of a mechanical way and just especially says something like, Prabhu, that's your karma. It was your karma, you picked a bad guru. It was your karma, you got molested in the Gurukul or something. You just got to tolerate it. And we just feel so hurt and offended by that, not only because there's no sympathy in it, but because there is no sympathy in it because the person hasn't realized it. It's just a completely theoretical, mechanical thing they're saying. I'm supposed to speak about bhakti as a solution always. So I read that in the books. You heard that class. But Krishna told the gopis, he said that I'm guilty. And I'll understand if you leave me. I understand if you don't want to be with me. I'll accept that. The gopis have been traumatized. This is how you deal with someone who's gone through trauma. You don't try to preach to them and tell them you're in Maya, you should think like this, or like Krishna doesn't do that. Krishna says, it's okay if you don't want to be with me, you want to go somewhere else, you can. And that's the way we should approach such a subject. Okay? And Bonnie writes, we would be stuck here forever eating ice cream and not even aware of our wretched position. Yeah, it depends on how good the ice cream is, right?
Could you please react to Harichandra Prabhu's thing, because I find it interesting. I'd like to hear your.
I didn't see Hari Chandraprabhu's thing. Oh, there's
It's
a
a little
few.
bit higher. It's a little
Yeah,
bit higher.
yeah. Hari Chandraprabhu's comments are always a little high. So he says, how to avoid possible mistakes. I'm concerned that Srila Prabhupada may be in danger of losing that. I'm concerned that Srila Prabhupada may be to advanced devotees. Well, yeah,
Meaning that he risks like the confidence of people by putting on like two different or more different versions.
yeah. I like your comment. Isn't it safer to have one answer? Yeah, we can just vote on it. Decide which answer that we like. My Guru Maharaj was very disturbed by that. That's what happened one year, in my opinion. And I don't hate the devotees for that. Their motivation is sweet. They want to try to pacify everything, and they're the leaders, so they get together, and that's the tool they have to solve problems is voting. So they took a vote and said, this is what the Siddhanta is, like this, and it's meant to make everything simple. We oftentimes do that. We like simple things that are antiseptic and prophylactic. We don't like it when there's different considerations and different possibilities. It makes it really complicated. We become disturbed by that. But that's the spiritual world. The spiritual world has unlimited variety. And we should understand when we say Vyavasyatmika Buddhi, that one pointedness should be the instructions of Gurudev. In Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And there's different branches of Gaudiya Vaishnavism which are a little weird. Sometimes they're not all purely vegetarian. Sometimes there's some Mayavad impression in them. There's some this and that. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhaktivinoda Thakur cleared all that out. And they showed us, not just themselves, but they showed us the path and the teachings of our previous acharyas who were speaking about Sudha Bhakti. If you go on Facebook, Bonnie's on Facebook, I'm on Facebook some. One of the things I find very disturbing, but also a little bit revealing, is devotees. There's one devotee who's like really into Mr. Trump, and he's going on and on, against the liberals and this and that and the other. And okay, whatever, that's his thing. But then he made a comment. He said, yeah, I only go to the temple once or twice a year. And that for me was very revealing. My Guru Maharaj never spoke about politics or got into this thing or that. He was always speaking about Sudha Bhakti. But if we're not associating with advanced devotees who are focused on, we'll be confused by so many different things. It'll be very clear to us that all this is something which is important for that child. Don't drink bleach. It's a loving instruction from the mother, but it's not an eternal consideration because we see some of our acharyas use bleach. Is that helpful, Harichandra Prabhu? Okay, listen to this here too. Lalitza said, there's so much of this answer I think this poses a challenge and forces us to reconsider our deepest motivation to approach the Supreme. Everything for his pleasure. I'm willing to suffer and consider that as the source of the greatest happiness. I struggle with this, nothing but evidence of my fallen condition. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, to support with Leela Purushottam was just saying, in one commentary in the 10th canto, he explains that the whole purpose of this material world is for Krishna's pleasure.
Yeah.
It's like a background for Krishna's pastimes. It's not for the reformation of the spirit, of the conditioned souls. Sorry to disappoint everybody, but we're not the star of the show. The star of the show is always Krishna.
Like that.
Maker, because I like it when there are multiple answers that appear conflicting. I do too, Bonnie. I think that's cool. In my experience, if one keeps reading Shastra more and more, it becomes revealed, and there's a gestalt that forms for sure. Yeah, at one point that we realize there are different ways to look at things. And sometimes we like just a very simple answer, like Harichandra Prabhu was saying, isn't it safer to have one answer? And sometimes we give that because we just feel like, well, there's a bunch of new devotees here, so let's just give one answer and that's it, right? I'll give you a really radical one. You should be vegetarian, don't eat meat. That's one answer, right? But what about Garuda, who's a non-vegetarian Vaishnava, who eats turtles and snakes sometimes? And there's other examples I don't want to go into right now. How do we understand that? So we should be one-pointed. It is safer to have just one answer, but at the same time, there may be other answers too. And when we become a little more mature, we can digest that. And that doesn't mean that and I'm just gonna I like troublemakers. Everybody in this group is a troublemaker, basically, as I can see. Okay, we're here in Kolkata. I'll just tell you a little thing personally, because this book fair, last year there's over 900 booths. This is the second biggest book fair in the world. And I've experienced coming here that there's at least 2 or 3 or 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 different shops, different booths that have old dust-covered Bengali books, and I get completely dirty. My hands become black. I just spend hours looking through them, find treasures. Sometimes I found Padma Purana published by Bhaktivinoda Thakur about 100 years ago once. I got a copy of a Adi Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita with a commentary said to be by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. I don't believe that. That's another subject. But that book was about 250 years old. And I paid 50 rupees for it, which is less than $1. Really exciting for me. And we want to be here, want to spend a little time with Sundar Gopal Prabhu and talk with him some about our research institute. We had these devotees over yesterday. It was such a nice meeting. Yashoda Lal Prabhu pointed out there was a Saint Teresa, not the Kolkata Saint Teresa, some other place, I think in Italy or Spain, maybe someone knows. And she started several different groups, nuns.
She's from Spain. Yeah.
Spain. And one of her principles that I really, really liked when I heard all of her convents or whatever for the ladies, they never have more than 12 persons, because she said that's how many disciples Christ had, and that should be the number. I really, really liked it. I put the number a little bit higher, maybe up to 20 or something, but after 12, politics enter and problems and things, and I 100% agree with that. So we want to try to have this project in Puri. We have a small group. Right now, we're just trying to figure out where we have some opportunities maybe to have some property, but there's some catches, there's all things, and see what we think about that. Anyway, and we're sure. So nice to see everybody. I'm going back to Puri in a few days. When we go back, we have a retreat with Vaisheshika Prabhu. And I don't know what my role is going to be with that, but hopefully next week we'll have another session. We can get back together again and go on with Prema-bhakti-candrika. Okay, thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhishcha kripa sindhu bheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha nandakoti vaishnava.